The Phoenix Suns just went 8-0 in the bubble after a mediocre regular season, but still did not make the playoffs after being eliminated by the Portland Trailblazers, winning a game over the Brooklyn Nets to qualify for the final play-in spot. Phoenix wildly exceeded expectations by being one of the last teams invited to the bubble. However, they were the only team to maintain a perfect 8-0 record throughout all seeding games. Despite the fact that they won't be playing in the playoffs this season, Phoenix just finished an incredible run and has a lot of momentum to build on going into next season. So, what does next season look like for the Suns? Today I'm going to be going over what the future looks like for Phoenix and where they're going to go from here, what their offseason plans look like, what the core of the team is, and what can possibly take this team to the next level. You can't talk about the Suns without talking about Devin Booker. He led the team in scoring while being named to his first All-Star team. Some have been calling for the Suns to trade Booker ever since his career began, but they just made the case for Booker to stick it out and remain with the team as they continued their rise into actual contention. Phoenix has put together a nice roster around Booker, and with the new coach Monty Williams leading the way, they've been able to put together a pretty good season, which gives them momentum going into next year. The ultimate key for the Suns to take the next step in their evolution as a team is the development of DeAndre Ayton. Ayton was the number 1 overall pick in the draft a few seasons ago, selected ahead of players like Trae Young and Luka Doncic. And while Ayton hasn't been bad, he certainly hasn't lived up to the standards that those two guys have set so far in their career. He started the season with a 25-game suspension for PEDs and has been up and down throughout. Ayton has been a solid rim runner and shot blocker for the Suns. He's been pretty good on defense and has improved steadily on offense throughout his career. Ayton is a building block for the Suns, and if he can take another leap heading into his 3rd season, they're going to be a problem next year. Ayton is skilled and athletic, and the ceiling for the Suns only gets higher if he can live up to the expectation of a former number 1 overall pick. The third and final franchise building block I have for the Suns may come as a surprise, and it's Mikal Bridges. Bridges has improved dramatically in his 2nd season, and especially in the bubble. He's an incredible defensive wing and a developing 3-point shooter. He still has a long way to go to reach his full potential, but what we've seen out of Mikal Bridges so far lets me believe that he's going to be a strong 3-and-D wing for years to come in the NBA. Entering his 3rd season, Bridges will have a chance to round out his game and become a more complete player as the Suns look to contend for a playoff spot once again. So those are the 3 players that I would definitely hold on to if I was the Suns. There's a couple other players on this roster that are definitely good and they're nice to have, but those 3 are what I would consider essential franchise building blocks. Now, the Suns have a couple movable salaries if they were to try to swing for the fences and trade for a superstar. There probably isn't that player available this offseason. However, they will have a chance to make a splash move if somebody becomes available. They have young players, they have picks and movable contracts, so they can make it happen. 2 players that could potentially be packaged in a trade are Ricky Rubio and Kelly Oubre. Now, Oubre was mentioned in trade rumors around the deadline. We're not sure how much of that is true, but there were rumors that the Suns were shopping Oubre. Rubio has been a nice pickup for the team after some considered it to be an overpay in the offseason, but Devin Booker has certainly benefited from having a guard who can play on ball and allowing him to play off ball. With Booker not having to handle the ball every single possession down the floor, it frees him up for more cuts and more open threes. Oubre is still young and getting better, and he's the type of player that a lot of contenders would want to have on their team. He can play good defense and hit a 3-point jumper. Now, we don't know what the cap situation will be like in the offseason. Because of the pandemic, a lot of teams are having to think about cutting costs with the salary cap potentially being lowered next season. Both Oubre and Rubio are candidates to be moved if the Suns are desperate for money, and with owner Robert Sarver running the team, we can't be sure that the Suns are actually going to commit to paying that extra money to continue to stay competitive. They might decide to ship one or both away in order to save a little bit of money. That's just how it is with these mid-tier salary players in the NBA. Both are making around $15 million, and those are perfect candidates to either be traded away to save costs or packaged for a star. Now, if I was the Suns, I'd actually decide to hold on to both, at least for next season. Oubre is a free agent after next year, and if they decide that maybe he's not worth it, or if he's not going to re-sign, maybe they trade him away at the deadline or earlier in order to get maybe some picks or a younger player or something like that. But that's always an option. Taking a look at the Suns' salary cap sheet for next season, most of the team is actually signed. They only have 3 relevant free agents in Aaron Baines, Dario Saric, and Javon Carter. I would prioritize bringing back Saric and Carter out of this group. Carter, I believe, will be a restricted free agent. He shouldn't get too much of a deal. I say, maybe not a minimum, but something slightly more, maybe worth $2 to $3 million a season is pretty fair for Carter. He had a strong showing in the bubble, but he is going to be nothing more than a backup point guard for his career, and he's a good one. He plays tough defense, can hit a couple shots, but I wouldn't overpay for him. But definitely, I would prioritize bringing him back. I would also try to bring back Dario Saric. Now, he was a lot better with Phoenix than he was with Minnesota last season. Maybe not hitting the same levels of production as he did in Philadelphia early in his career, but he's still young, still getting better, and he has a chance to really prove himself as an integral part of this team going forward. I wouldn't, overpay him, definitely. Anything more than $10 million a year, I think, is too much for a guy like Saric. But he's a good player. He's solid. And he can score the ball a little bit, make a couple plays. He's decent on defense. So I would try to keep him as well. And then for Aaron Baines, I would also try to re-sign Baines. Definitely don't overpay. Anything more than $7 or $8 million a season for Baines is probably too much. I get that he's a meme on Twitter and everything. But realistically, he's a veteran. He's, on the wrong side of 30 at this point. I wouldn't, break the bank for Aaron Baines. If he wants to come back, take a fair deal, I would definitely do that. But otherwise, maybe he'll decide to leave and go join a contender or somewhere that'll pay him a little bit more money. If he asks for anything more than $7 or $8 million, I would just say good luck and we'll see you later. Now, we don't know what exactly the salary cap will be for the Suns, but after bringing back those 3 players, it's likely that they won't have much room left. However, they can still chase some veterans in free agency to kind of fill out the roster and basically just try to run the same team back for next year. I would prioritize finding wings who can shoot the 3 and play good defense. They already have Oubre and Bridges who are pretty good at that, but you can never have too many good 3-and-D wings in the NBA. I get that those are rare players to find, and they're probably going to cost more than the Suns are going to be able to pay. But just going after a couple budget options would be, I think, a good move for them. It also wouldn't hurt to search for veterans, especially if Baines does decide to leave this offseason. Baines was a good veteran presence. They also have Ricky Rubio, but past that, this is a very young team, and so I would consider looking for some veterans who can maybe play that wing position a little bit, someone who could help out down low as a backup to Ayton, and they could kind of go from there, finding players who would be a good mentor to the young players and help out Coach Monty Williams when he's trying to, teach those players how to play in the NBA. Because they barely missed the playoffs, the Suns will have their lottery pick this year. It's likely that it will be, in the bottom level of the lottery, around 14, 13. But there's a chance that they could jump up and get a higher pick, which would be very nice for them to add another young player in the draft. It's a low possibility, but, with the flattened lottery odds, there's always the chance for that. In the draft, again, I would target just more players who can play that wing position, just kind of round out their roster, come off the bench, join and split those minutes with players like Bridges and Oubre and Cam Johnson. Overall, I think it's been a pretty successful season from the Suns. They started pretty well and then kind of lulled back down and then came back piping hot, blazing, finishing 8-0 in the bubble. Still failing to make the playoffs because they didn't get the help that they needed, but that's okay. They definitely gained the respect of the league, as Coach Monty Williams said in his speech to the team today. And they kind of put the league on notice going forward that these Suns are here to stay, and they're definitely going to be a contender for the playoffs in the Western Conference next season. Whether or not that is actually going to happen, who knows? That hinges on the continued improvement of players like Ayton and Bridges, and then the continued stellar play of someone like Devin Booker. Barring any injury, this team has a good core moving forward, and they've got some nice pieces that they'll be able to use in order to potentially trade for a star if one becomes available, or just continue developing their players, continue using those draft assets to make the team better. And it seems like they finally found their coach of the future in Monty Williams after going through, I believe it was 4 coaches in the first 5 years of Devin Booker's career. Williams has been definitely a bright spot and been a great coach for them this season, especially in the bubble. And so I think that they'll be able to find success going forward the longer he's with the team, and the maturity and the growth coming from Devin Booker and Ayton and Mikal Bridges. So that's about it for my Suns season preview. I hope you enjoyed it. This is going to be the first video up on the channel if everything goes right. And we'll see what happens. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. See you guys in the next one.